I tell you, I'm going to put my water down here. It's dry here in this part of the world, you know. That's why they call it a desert. It is so good to be here with you guys. You know, the thing about family, and this is a family, is that you miss them when they're not around, right? You draw from them the synergy, the energy, the love, the spirit moves you and drives you. And when you're separated from the family, somehow for me, that leaves just a big, big, big hole in my life. So I'm glad to be here with you, filling that hole. So, don't you love Dr. Applegate? I mean, she takes this amazingly complex product and gives you one thing you got to do. You just got to keep your bus drivers happy. Right? It's as simple as that. Just keep your bus drivers happy. And we just happen to have the tools for happy bus drivers. And did you enjoy Dr. Beck's presentation yesterday? Yeah. When you get to know Susan better, you're going to find that her heart is your heart. Her beliefs are your beliefs. Her goals are your goals. She wants the same thing that we all want, and it is a happier, healthier world. Because when we get there, then all the rest of it gets a lot easier, right? All the rest of it becomes less significant, less impactful. I think one of the things that I hope you see from both Dr. Applegate and Dr. Beck is the depth of the scientific power that's behind you and your business, okay? Those are two very, very strong people, but we have more. We have others. You know about Dr. Clayton and Dr. Hooper and Dr. Karugi. Everybody love Ariana Karugi? Yeah. And we have more than those, people you haven't met yet, people who are working in the trenches, if you will, doing the hard work, coming up through the system, learning about who we are and why we act the way we do and the things that make us stand out in the marketplace. Very, very broad. I am lucky enough to just be one person standing up in front of you representing that vast team of scientists and product technologists here in the US and Europe and all over the world that are the driving force behind the product excellence that this company has a reputation of doing year after year after year, decade after decade after decade. You know, you don't get here by accident. You have to have a plan and you have to have a goal and you have to be committed to it every day. And I can guarantee you that that's exactly the mindset of leadership today. That is exactly how Kendra approaches our business. It's exactly how she approaches the Scientific Advisory Board and the Product Technology Group. And you can be very, very happy and excited about that. So I'm going to do something a little different here. Let me figure this out. Here, push the big green button. I'm going to do something a little different here. You know, I want to talk about a time for regenerative health. You know, we talk about health protection and, you know, building it and so on and so forth, but we're at a point in time where it's time to actually think about the idea of regenerating lost health, because that was a reality for huge numbers of people all around the world, okay? They'd lost a lot. I mean, if you think about the last 18 months, this was a once-in-a-century challenge that was sort of thrown upon us. You know, a couple of years ago, I would not have thought something like this could happen. I mean, you always know that viruses and stuff like that are laying around in the weeds, but you would hope that we would be prepared. And we learned a few things from this, so I'm going to look back at that little 18-month period, just a little bit. I don't want to dwell on the past. And I don't want to tell you a few things about what we learned, some things that we relearned, because we seem to forget. And then talk a little bit about where science is taking that knowledge and what it offers as a promise to the future, so that you can see that not only where we are, but where we're going, that you can sense not only the science that we have at our command today, and it is significant. But where we're going to take that, where that science is actually taking us and what it's going to mean in the future. So just a little different journey, okay? So let's take a look. I say once in a century challenge, it was bigger. We've had big challenges before, but we had, amongst other things, we had a big political challenge, right? We had a tug of war going on that polarized not only this country, but much of the rest of the world. In the midst of that, we had economic catastrophe befalling everybody. Small business people lost everything. I know people who I've known for years who lost their business and lost their homes and lost their health. That's true for many, many, many people. Sadly enough, it's true. And what my personal belief now is we were not prepared. We were not prepared. Our social network, our governments, if you will, were not prepared for this. So what does it tell you? Well, you never know when you have to row your own boat. Right? And the way you make sure you know how to row your own boat is you row it. Okay? So you don't have to, somebody throw you in the boat and say, okay, row. And you find yourself doing this, right? Which will tell you you're going to go around and round, round in circles. So we have to be prepared. We have to actually focus on this idea of taking care of ourselves. We cannot expect any big organization or any big situation to protect us. Okay, we have to take personal responsibility. We have to build that ability to protect ourselves. We have that, our bodies have it. We just have to be conscious of what it needs to make sure that it can fulfill its job. And I'll talk a little bit about how that manifested in the evidence coming out of here, okay? So what did we learn? Well, we learned to Zoom, right? Because my dog Zooms. But we learned to Zoom. Now, 2, 3, 4 years ago, how many in the room were Zooming? Who knew what Zoom was? But now, the world is Zooming, or some variation of that idea. I have a Zoom room in my house, right? Got the camera set up and stuff, and sit there and got the backdrop, green screen, teleprompter, That's my Zoom room. I Zoom. So, and I think a lot of you Zoom to one extent or another, and it's a great tool. It's no substitute for, hi, how you doing? Nice to be in the room with you, but it is a way of staying connected. It is a way of continuing the message stream, right, to keep people focused, for people to ask for help and people to give help. So what else did we learn? We learned a new word, comorbidities, okay? Everybody know what comorbidities are? Yeah, simply, they're the chronic diseases we've been talking about for all these years, right? It's just when they exist, they become a comorbidity because them and a challenge put you at greater risk of morbidity or death, okay? So there was a lot of evidence came out of all of this that talked about the relationship of comorbidities in dealing with the challenge that we faced. And reality is that those people with the greatest or strongest comorbidities, biggest comorbidities, had the biggest challenge. The one that stood out was hypertension. You heard Dr. Applegate mentioned hypertension in her cardiovascular health, heart health presentation. Hypertension is a big deal. The thing about hypertension is most people have no idea that they have hypertension. It's a silent killer. There are no symptoms per se, and when they do manifest, they're usually pretty obvious and pretty life-threatening. So we didn't have any symptoms of this, but big portions of the population were at risk of having undiagnosed or unmanaged hypertension. It's so widespread in the population that the Surgeon General did a call to action. Did you all hear? You hear the Surgeon General calling you to action about hypertension? He didn't have a big enough amplifier, apparently. Because he did that, his Surgeon General. This is a very bright man, by the way, Jerome Adams. Sadly, he moved on not because of his brilliance, but because of his politics, but that's a different story. But he called an alarm and said, listen, hypertension is such a problem that we've got to do something about it. Too many people have it. It is a primary driver of too many diseases and conditions, and it's not that hard to fix. Okay? You can fix it dietarily. You can fix it lifestyle-wise. At best would be both of those combinations, and there are some pretty darn good drugs if you happen to fall prey to needing those. Okay? But it's just something, but you got to know. So how many people know what their blood pressure is? Okay? I can tell you what my blood pressure numbers are clear back to 2013. It's in my smartphone back there. If you want to see it, I'll show you. I am proud of my blood pressure. I am a less than 120, less than 80 guy and have been for a long, long time. Okay? I believe in using all the tools in the box when you take care of yourself. So, you know, I exercise, I stretch, I eat a really good diet, and I take the best dietary supplements in the world. Okay? So really important, if you don't know this biomarker called your blood pressure, get it, okay? Little cuff deal, $39, $29. If you go on to Amazon, you can probably get a pack of 3 for $40, right? Which is a good thing, because then when you talk to people and they say, you know, they don't know their blood pressure, you just give them a machine. Say when you know, go rest someplace, take this down, and I'll get back to you tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Okay? Because knowing your biomarkers is important. Everybody should know their biomarkers. I know my cholesterol, my A1C, my glucose, my creatine, I just had I just turned 75. I have a complete profile, everything that they can do, stuff I didn't know they could do to my blood work. And my doctor, when I went back to talk to him, he said, you know, your blood panel's really boring. There's nothing, everything is within the norms. And I said, well, did you expect otherwise? And he said, no, I know you. He's been my doctor for quite a while. He's one of the people that I actually convinced that omega-3 fatty acids actually can make an important difference. Took him a while to see the light, but, you know, that's okay. We've got time. Another thing that we learned, what did we relearn? Let's skip to what we relearned. We relearned that health is a delicate balance. You know, I don't want, you know, you shouldn't go around thinking I'm healthy and I'm bulletproof. I like to say that, you know, I feel so good, I think I'm bulletproof, but you're never bulletproof. Health is a very delicate balance. We are here strong and healthy because of the effort that we put into being strong and healthy, but you can never stop that, and you can never assume that something isn't waiting around the corner to kick your butt. Okay, pardon my expression. But the world is full of these challenges, full of these sorts of things, all the time. You don't know what you're going to encounter. Then that balance of health, from being really healthy and vigorous to being less than healthy and vigorous, to being maybe ill or sick and, you know, bedridden, it's not a long journey if you're not careful. So we need to recognize that. We need to work on that every day, right? Health challenges are everywhere. The other thing we relearn is that diet and nutrition are the foundation of your health. We relearned that because when people had that experience that they had, okay, in the last 18 months, we found that those who had the best diet and nutritional status as they encountered this challenge had the highest probability of survival. It's basic, that fact. I won't go into details. I could point out a lot of stuff to you, but might make some folks angry. But it boils right down to that. Those of us who had the best diet and had the strongest nutrition and, you know, practiced the NeoLife lifestyle, we had the highest probability of survival. Okay, so diet and nutrition is the foundation of your health. Everybody, right? Every age, doesn't matter what age, and I think Dr. Applegate did a good job of showing you that health starts day one, maybe even minus day when mom's taken charge of the whole deal. But everybody, every age, every day, we need to focus on this. It needs to be something that you practice. It needs to become part of your daily lifestyle, your daily life routine. First thing I do when I get up in the morning is make sure I'm sucking air and pumping blood. Two important things, right? And then I stretch, and while I'm stretching, I think about what am I going to eat, okay? I pretty much know what I'm going to eat because my refrigerator's full of fruits and things like that, a lot of good things. So I generally get up and have protein shake with a lot of fruit, maybe some fiber, whole grain toast or something like that. And that's how I start most every day. Have an eggs sometime because I like eggs, and as Dr. Applegate pointed out, eggs aren't the problem. It might be the bacon, right? So yeah, but this is good. So now, knowing what we've learned and relearned here, what is the challenge going forward? Well, the challenge is really pretty simple. We need to strengthen ourselves. Even those of us who didn't really have a problem, we need to not assume that we are strong enough, that we need to continue to work on that. It's not like, you get up to healthy and you say, okay, now I can cruise. You don't coast. No coasting when it comes to health. You have to pursue it all the time, okay? So we need to strengthen, and for those who came through this and had deeper impact from this, we need to help them recover, rebuild, and renew. Because that's what they need to do, and the body will do that. The body will do that. I'm going to give you some examples. Some you probably knew, some you probably didn't know, but the body has the capacity to do that. It can, with your help, dig itself out of a deep hole, okay? We see it and hear it in our population and our testimonials all the time. I had this really huge problem, and then I discovered NeoLife, and I started the NeoLife lifestyle and the NeoLife products, and today I am a new person, a totally new person. Okay? So we need to help people. We need to regenerate health, help them regenerate health. Regenerate your own if you're having any struggles, but regenerate health. So let's talk about what is science telling us about what regeneration is, just so we're clear. So this says, in biology, the process of renewal, restoration, and tissue growth that makes genomes, that's genetic groupings, cells, organisms, and ecosystems resilient to natural fluctuations or events that cause disturbance or damage. That's what just happened. We had an event that caused disturbance and damage in about everything, right? It's how we remain vital and resilient, right? The body's capacity to do this. It's going on all the time. Every species is capable of regeneration, from bacteria to humans, okay? You probably knew that, but... So how do we regenerate? Well, we as humans have two pathways. Unlike animals, they only have one. We have two pathways. We have this idea of medical regeneration, where it's the regenerative medicine is doing a lot of amazing things. They're working with stem cells and finding ways to induce the body to do things that is truly amazing. I, for one, hope I never need them, but I'm glad they're there if I do, okay? And then there's natural regeneration. And that's where our focus should be. We're not in the medical community. We're not trying to cure anybody of that. We're just trying to maximize the natural processes in the body to keep us healthy, but to regenerate lost health should it occur. And you can see from this chart, there's a lot of things that go on here. You regenerate all the time, by the way. You replace all your heart cells about every 10 years. Every 10 years you get a new heart. Did you know that? Every 5 days you get a new intestinal lining. We're constantly regenerating. It's the natural process. It's the elegance of the system, if you will. Not only is the system biologically amazing, but the software that runs it is just beyond understanding. How does it know that it has to regenerate a new intestinal lining every 5 days? And how does it do it? How does it get that done? Oh, here's how it gets it done. Natural regeneration in humans starts at the cell. It's a cellular event. Everything in humans is a cellular event. Okay? It's a cellular event through a continuous physiologic process. We're replacing cells all the time. I just talked about your heart. and your intestinal lining. That's going on all the time. You can see some other examples. We turn over our skin every 30 to 40 days. When you're young, you know, in your 20s, maybe every 20 days. But as we get to middle age, 30 to 40 days to replace all your skin cells. Pretty good trick, huh? That's a lot of cells. You could lose count trying to keep up with that. Some of the organs in the body have the capacity to regenerate. The liver can regenerate. Okay, I'll give you some examples of just how amazing that is in a moment. But we can also regenerate kidneys, pancreas, thyroids, adrenals, lungs, to a lesser degree than the kidney, but still it's there. And we're beginning to unlock the understanding of how that happens. What are the drivers? What does the body need? We can regenerate nerves now. We do it sort of automatically. There's a lot of scientific evidence pointing at the ability to regenerate peripheral nerves. Nerves out here, you know, the peripheral neuropathy or diabetic neuropathy, where you lose nerve sensation at your extremities. We're beginning to see in science point out that we can do that. We're unlocking those secrets to help people regenerate those nerves. We can regenerate brain neurons. We know that the brain has the ability to, if it gets damaged in one place, to create another pathway to get to that memory or to that function. It does that by regenerating those neurons. We know that under the right circumstances, people who lose their toes to frostbite can grow toes. People who lose the tips of their fingers to accidents can regrow the tips of their fingers. We're starting to understand how that happens. Pretty powerful, huh? What we know is at the base of all that, though, in this regenerative process, the question is, what do you regenerate with? Okay? And that's the role of diet and nutrition. It's to provide that substrate, all of that material that the body can use to regenerate, because you can't build a house if you don't have any building materials. Okay? Or you might build a house and find out that you have only enough to do the walls and nothing for a roof. Okay, that's called a deficiency. Okay? That is subadequate, suboptimum. So what is science telling us about, what's the leading edge of science telling us about these things? Well, let's take a look here. These are some scientific articles that I just sort of popped up here just to highlight for you what's going on. And you can see in the names of these things where the evidence is going. This is developmental and comparative immunology. Immune system plays a big role in all of this process, right, of regeneration. Inflammation and immunity in organ regeneration. What they're telling us is that in order to regenerate organs effectively, to whatever the limitations are, you have to have an immune system that's in balance. And that immune system is very much tied to the inflammatory processes in your body. Inflammation is one of the immune system's warriors, but uncontrolled inflammation is one of its antagonists, things that make it struggle. So what they're pointing out here is that controlling inflammation in your body is a mechanism by which you can promote organ regeneration. In the next one, advances of nutrition, this is a 2020, that DCI one there is just a few weeks ago, 2021. This advances in nutrition, this was from our folks at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who have talked about neurodegenerative nutrition, where they're going in and looking at people who have neurologic damage, either because they're veterans returning from the war, or people who have car crashes or things like that, have accidents that cause this, and they're beginning to unlock the secrets of how to regenerate damaged nerves. Okay? The reason that it's appearing in the book called Advances in Nutrition is because they're saying nutrition plays a big role, again, in promoting that nerve regeneration. You can't build new nerves if you don't have the materials to not only start them and build them, but kickstart them and get them to function. And those are all nutritionally dependent events. What else we got here? Let's take a look at a few more. Here's one, how important is nutrition during regenerative treatments? Now, I mentioned medical, the regenerative medicine, and they're doing amazing things. But what they are finding, they have found, and more practices are acknowledging, is that nutrition is fundamental to getting that process done. They can do all their magic, but when nutrition isn't there to support it, when abundant nutrition isn't there to support it, the outcomes of their work is compromised. Conversely, when nutrition is there and present and strong, and I'll talk about specific nutrients in a moment, then their outcomes are more successful. It's, a simple black and white sort of analysis. You can do that. You can, analyze the data and come to that conclusion. Right below that, there's in Cell. I don't know, how many of you guys subscribe to Cell? Don't. Okay, very complicated, very, very complicated, very complicated. But I like this particular one. It says it's about 100 years of exploiting diet and nutrition for tissue regeneration. Who knew we were exploiting diet and nutrition for tissue generation for 100 years? Okay, well, there were people working on it. One of the things I learned a long time ago is, you can extend lifespan by restricting the amount of calories you consume. Low caloric or subcaloric diets tend to increase lifespan. They see it in animals and they see it in humans as well. So that's good. But what they're finding out now, as we get further down the track here, is what is it about nutrition that allows that and promotes this tissue regeneration? Why is it so important? And in this particular 4-page review, it explains that we're beginning to understand the relationship between certain nutrients and how this process works. In this case, they highlight vitamin C, which was one of the things that Linus Pauling said about, I think, 35 or 40 years ago about vitamin C, but they have just now come around and said, oh, maybe he was right. In this other one here, this is clinical orthopedics and trauma. Maybe some of our trauma physicians know about this publication. This is a group of people in the medical community that deal with what it says, right? Trauma, the impacts of trauma on the body. And they say here in this, the headline of this particular article that's important is nutritional and metabolic and genetic considerations to optimize regenerative medicine. Again, they know that genes play a role in how strong you are. We all know that already, right? We know that your metabolic status plays an important role. And now they're saying that nutrition plays an important role in that as well, that those 3 things are primary drivers of how you can recover from or regenerate from the sort of damage you get when your Jeep rolls up beside some sort of improvised explosive device. So really powerful stuff coming out of there that we need to continue to look on. Now let's take a look at what they're saying about a few specific nutrients. This is about omega-3s and regeneration. This is in the journal Diabetes and Its Complications. There's a journal for just about everything you can imagine, by the way, because there's such a proliferation of data that comes out thanks to computers and things like that it's easier to compile data, it's easier to research data. You can gather up all the data in the world on your desktop and create an algorithm that will search it by toenail length and come up with something exciting about toenail length, if that's what you want to do. So in this particular case, this group works with diabetes and the complications of diabetes, peripheral neuropathy, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, so on and so forth. And what they said is following 12 months of omega-3 nutrition therapy for patients with type 1 diabetes, that there was a strong association to nerve regeneration. Now, for diabetics, peripheral neuropathy or diabetic neuropathy is an issue. So they start managing and looking at this thing and saying, what do we find? They found 2 things. They found, one, that people who had already good baseline omega-3s when they entered the study were already doing better than those people who didn't have good baseline omega-3s in terms of the status of that condition. They also found that supplementation for 12 weeks, as they say here, helped everybody. The people who already had a good baseline, brought their baseline up and improved them, but the people who were deficient or suboptimum intake of omega-3s, it helped them a lot with this challenge, and they saw that it was actually associated, this was associated with nerve regeneration. Think about that for a moment. It was associated with nerve regeneration. For all those people out there who are saying, what do I do? Well, you know, we have no magic bullet. We can't tap the wand and say, voila, you're cured. But we can point them to things that we know or have a strong scientific association, that they are, if they're not getting enough omega-3s, they should start this right away, because having an abundance of omega-3s is associated with nerve regeneration. And it says in their statement down there, in conclusion, low plasma DHA was associated with prevalent DSP. That's a type of diabetes, a condition of diabetes. With N3, that's omega-3 therapy, increased N3 levels and higher baseline N3 levels were associated with greater nerve regeneration. They felt that they needed to state that in their conclusion, so no one would misunderstand what they were trying to say, because a lot of people do misunderstand. Here's another one. This is another journal that's fun to read, Clinical Care. Again, if you're into medicine, it's probably something that you might have read already or heard about. Interestingly enough, the SAB doesn't just look at JAMA or Nature, or we look at a very, very, very diverse array of scientific journals, especially reputable ones like this, because they give us a broader understanding, help us get to where we need to be. So this says of the effect of omega-3 on hepatic regeneration, that's regrowing your liver, in adult living donors undergoing hepatic resection for liver transplantation, a randomized controlled trial. Now, you know, but some people are really, 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 really brave and are willing to give other people half of their liver. Okay, living liver donors. You know that? Are you on the living liver donor list? Okay, I'm not either. No one wants my liver. I'm too old now. Though my liver's probably only 35. So it says here omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids effectively promote liver regeneration. Well, what is liver regeneration? Well, if you're a living liver donor and you go into the hospital and you say, I'm going to give half of my liver to this guy over here, right? And they go in and they sedate you and they cut you open, they take half your liver and give it to him, right? They sew you back up, they watch you for a few days. In about 2 weeks, your liver will be fully functional again, and anywhere from a few months to a year, it will have grown back to its original size, all with no help from you. Okay, you won't have to think about it. It'll do it on its own. Now, you should think about it and make sure it's got all the things it needs to build a healthy liver with, but think about that. Think about that. You can cut your liver in half, and somehow it knows how to regrow. Not only that, the half you gave to the other guy does the same thing. How does it know? So both the donor and the person that got the other half, both of you have fully functional livers within a year. Wow. If that's not a wow, I don't know what is. I tell you, you know, I talk about how amazing the hardware is. The software. It's the software. In the end, it's the software. How does it know to do that? Some really brilliant person created that. Now, here's one you're probably all familiar with. You all know this research, right? 5-lipoxygenase metabolite 4-DHD is a mediator of anti-angiogenesis. You know this, right? You don't know it? Well, you should know it, because that's our work. Or I should say Dr. Karugi's work. I don't want to take any credit for that. Dr. Karugi is brilliant. So you remember this, right? You remember when Dr. Karugi got together with Dr. Groener at UC Berkeley, and when we were doing our human clinical trials on omega-3 salmon oil plus, they got some of that serum from all of those participants, and they went over and they looked at it, and Dr. Groener proved that all of those people on our product had a higher capacity to produce a compound called resolvin. That's important because resolvin is what resolves inflammation. Okay? You remember I wrote an article at the time called Who Put the Heel in Healthy? Okay? Because the reality is that you cannot fully heal when inflammation persists. And many people go through life with low-grade inflammation being a regular part of their existence. And low-grade, chronic, low-grade inflammation is a problem. It's a driver of disease. It's a driver of aging. It's a contributor to all of the things that can go wrong with you, from your joints breaking down to your heart blowing up. This is really important stuff, but probably you remember that study now, and you should go familiarize yourself with, because 5-lipoxygenase is actually important. No, don't go do that. Let us worry about that. That's our job. Your job is to talk to people and help them understand how they can take care of themselves. But you probably didn't know that Dr. Groener went on, built on this work that we had done here, and proved two things: that omega-3 fatty acids actually promote post-operative tissue regeneration for eye operations. Okay? We know that the eye has the ability to regenerate. You can damage it and it'll correct itself pretty quickly, unless you really brutalize it. It'll correct itself, it'll regrow pretty quickly, but we didn't understand the drivers. We only knew that it happened, and now we're unlocking the drivers. So Dr. Groener went on to prove that postoperative eye tissue regeneration is promoted by omega-3s. He went on to also prove that postoperative kidney tissue regeneration is promoted by omega-3s. Dr. Groener's a bright guy, very, very bright guy. He is doing the sort of work that, you know, it's very translational at the moment. It's very much at the seam between science and understanding and application in the medical community. But he's a very bright guy, and luckily enough, you know, he's one of our guys. Just so you know that I never leave carotenoids out of a conversation. That was Bill. Had to be Bill, right? Had to be Bill. This is a little article that I picked up from Neurological Trauma, okay? It's called The Role of Carotenoids in Neurological Diseases. It says, carotenoids perform pivotal roles in the physiological neuronal development. Carotenoids and its derivatives, that be the things that happen to carotenoids when you metabolize them, protect neuronal tissue and help its regeneration. They're signaling molecules. You've probably heard us talking about that before. And, you know, anybody knows that if you can't communicate between different areas, you can't know what's going on. And an absence of carotenoids breaks down that communication link, so that communication, other parts of the body, other systems in the body can't tell what that part of the body how to regenerate, simply because they're not hearing the message. You heard Dr. Applegate mention our friend resveratrol. Resveratrol is a powerful bioactive nutrient, okay, powerful. You can get it from red wine, you can get it, which is fine. You can get it from a lot of things. If you look at Trey, there's resveratrol in there. That happens to all come from the skin of the grape before it's made into wine. We don't wait to make wine and then make resveratrol. We actually get the resveratrol from the same place the wine gets the resveratrol, and that is in the color that's in the skin of the grape. Okay, and by using that, we deliver this very powerful nutrient. Trey is one of my favorite products. I tend to consume a lot of it because I tend to just like it so much. I try to put it in everything, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, whenever I can. In this Journal of Pharmaceutical Sciences, it says it is a powerful and versatile compound with potent regenerative properties. Okay, so it actually participates directly in regenerative properties, regenerative events that go on inside your body. So, you know, these are things that we have included in our product line sort of because following nature's blueprint takes you there, following the science and following nature's blueprint. If you just follow the science, you don't get all of the extra knowledge that nature just wants to give you, okay? If you don't hold that science up against a background of nature, you don't really get clear pictures. So we have these things in our product line long before evidence like this comes out. We knew that they were fundamental. We knew that there was a need for them, but long before the evidence came out. 22 seconds, okay. Here's another one, nutrition and regeneration. Everybody knows about, cartilage breaks down and it wears out and so on and so forth, and you get knee osteoarthritis and the like. We introduced glucosamine a long time ago. We happened to use the hydrochloride version because we thought it was better and didn't have the risks that associated with the sulfite version or sulfate version for gastrointestinal upset and allergic response. Anyway, in this particular study on glucosamine hydrochloride, it says in the glucosamine group, the massive proliferation of matured cartilaginous tissue was observed, and the regenerated cartilaginous tissue were surrounded with a proliferation of chondroblast cells. Those are the cells that actually make the connective tissues and things like that in the joint, okay? So, a long time ago, we told you the story about how our product can help do that by delivering glucosamine, right? And long before the evidence actually popped up, I mean, there was evidence there, but more and more we find out that the evidence is directly connected to this regenerative process. So, flashing red light, and I'm on a countdown, okay? I want to do two things. There's one thing I want you to know is you've seen this slide before, I've used it before, nothing's changed. Okay, we are still at the center of that. That's all of this stuff, all of this data, this science, this knowledge is converging on where we are. Okay, we have been in this channel for decades. Everybody else was over there or over there. And guess where they're coming? They're coming back here. Because in the end, you have to embrace nature. You have to understand the nature of the organism if you're going to understand what it needs, how to keep it healthy, and how to regenerate it when it needs to be regenerated. So we remain there. We will always be there. We were always at that intersection between all of these sciences, and we will be forever. And I hope you got that today. And I'd like to leave you with this one thought. Somebody was talking about quotes yesterday. I think this is a great quote. Everybody know who Franklin Delano Roosevelt was? Okay, you can see 80 years ago, he said, in recent years, science has made outstanding discoveries as to the amounts and kinds of foods needed for maximum health and vigor. Good. Yet every survey of nutrition, by whatever methods conducted, shows that here in the United States, undernourishment is widespread and serious. Spool forward 80 years, still applies. What does that tell you? Whatever we've been doing hasn't been working. Actually, it's worse today because not only are we undernourished, we're overfed. We get far too many calories far too easily. Our bodies don't have to work to get sugar. They don't have to work to get fat. You can get them while you're sitting in your car driving by. You don't even have to slow down to get these things these days, right? And if you happen to be home, somebody and you just do a little dash. I think I need, people DoorDash ice cream. Did you know that? I mean, how does that work? But I think that's appropriate. I think that this understanding, we have this idea, end the trend, right? End the trend. The trend started a long time ago. The trend has been progressing. It has been getting worse. The evidence is always there. FDR knew it 80 years ago. We knew it today. Our job, your job, is to make sure everybody knows that it applies to them and get the word out, because only then can we truly end the trend. Thank you very much.